Hi guys, welcome back to a new Photoshop tutorial. My name is Manny and today I do not have a Photoshop tutorial for you. I'm joined with commercial photographer or South African based commercial photographer Morne Van Zyl, and we're going to have a little bit of an interview today. So Morne, welcome to the show.
Thanks Manny, it's good to be with you.
Yeah. Morne, first question that I wanted to ask you is basically, how did all of this start? How did you, tell us a bit about your background a bit.
I guess I had a background in IT. I did software development for about 12 years, and I just decided it was time for a change and something.
Fed up with your old job and
something that I needed to do something a little bit more creative. So I took a year off, or I kind of prepared for it, and I took a year off to study photography for a year. And and that was kind of the start of it. I had been taking pictures before that. I probably got my first camera just after school.
A small DSLR or what?
Yeah, it was an old Canon 50E, and I loved it. It was very cool. So I used to take lots of pictures. Not really formal portraits or anything like that. I just used to take it with me and snap pictures away. Obviously still shooting on film in those days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it was good fun. But so and then I did a formal year course, which was good. And then I started shooting
more
and
more.
Eventually, and early on I lectured as well. Well, I still do occasional lecturing as well. So yeah,
great.
That was the start.
That sounds pretty good. So you've also been quite a lot already in this whole photography business, and quite for a few years, I think 4 years or 5 years.
Probably closer on about 6 or 7 years.
6, 7 years,
yeah.
And I think you've got a good understanding of how this business actually works and how to get into it. Do you think there's something like a jump start to get quicker as a nobody into this photography business where you are now, like really?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I do think the rules are changing all the time. So a model which may have worked, or a method that may have worked 5 years ago, I think may be less applicable now, and I think there are new rules. So I think in the traditional model, especially also overseas based, would be that you would probably assist. So you would probably study. Or not, and you would assist or do an apprenticeship with a photographer and learn, and there would be quite a long time before you actually went out on your own and started to shoot stuff.
And get into it.
And also, I think the capital investment traditionally that you would have had to undergo to reach a professional level, was quite high. So you would have had to probably invest in fairly high-end medium format capture equipment, lighting, all those things, and I think as I said, the models definitely change. I think these days you can get quite far with much lower investment. You can rent gear. So these days it seems to be that I think if you want it bad enough,
you can quickly get into it.
And kind of as they say, if you hustle a bit, you can actually make it. So you get really beautiful images, and you can't really tell necessarily unless you do some serious pixel peeping, whether something was shot on a medium format digital capture system, or whether it was shot on an entry-level DSLR.
And what do you think about Photoshop-wise? If somebody has a really good understanding of Photoshop-wise, to manipulate pictures in such a way that they look completely beautiful, but aren't really shot that necessarily good.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for shooting things correctly. I do, depending on the assignment, it might vary from me doing not a lot in Photoshop to something which actually takes quite a bit of photoshopping. So, and my experience has been that if you shoot it correctly, or if you shoot it as close to correct as possible, the image is going to look better, and it's going to be more conducive to doing, even if you didn't do quite a bit in Photoshop with it.
Exactly.
So at this stage, I think Photoshop doesn't quite yet lend itself to fixing poor shooting.
No.
Although I think I'm sure one of the packages now, there's a thing about sharpening images retrospectively. So but I think it's I think if you can get it as close as possible out the camera in the correct way,
that would help.
Yeah, it's a good investment in time to do it up front rather than afterwards.
Yeah. One other thing that also always bugged me is, obviously nowadays everybody has a social media profile like Facebook and Twitter or a Facebook page. How effective do you think is that actually in this photography business? Is it really going to help you as a photographer, or is it more or less just the ego thing? I think
I don't think it's I don't necessarily think it's an ego thing. Social media provides us with a method or a tool to connect in a different way that we maybe traditionally would have, and that is good and that is bad as well. I think for me, I like the idea of a personal connection to somebody where you're actually face to face with somebody. But there's no doubt that social media, if used correctly, can be quite effective. So I think with social media, you almost have a semi-captive audience, people who are either your friend or following you or liking what you do, and because of the method or the methodology of social media, they spend a lot of time on those platforms.
Yes.
So of course, in the past you may have had to physically go and email something off to somebody, and they may look at it or not. But this is just a good method, as I say, and it's a bit of a captive audience.
How effective do you think is it in terms of getting an agency's notice or an art director's notice that he will actually find you or find your Facebook page and contact you for a job? Or
well, it's probably more effective than not having it.
Twitter,
that way.
Twitter maybe on a social media or like Twitter, I think you can interact quicker than Facebook, or Twitter is more intimate, more.
Yeah, I mean, I think the viral nature of social media is that an art director doesn't necessarily have to know about me or like my work, but he might be friends with somebody who does know me that comments on something, and via that, the person might, that they might notice it. Twitter as well. I mean, I think all of it is just if virally it works and that people talk about your work and people enjoy your work, then I think there's a chance that your work will get noticed using a social media platform. So I think it would be irresponsible probably to ignore social media, because I do think it is an effective tool.
Definitely effective. Yeah. So we would actually also encourage and say.
And the nice thing about social media is, in a way, you can engage people on almost more of a genuine level. So there's more of a connection of people who share interests, and if that interest, if other people see, the chances are that they're engaging you because they enjoy your work, as opposed to you being so in your face, ramming your work down people's, trying to get go-sees and all of that
thing going.
Yeah,
definitely. Would you tell us a bit about one of your next shoots that you lined up or have at the moment? And
well, my work is usually a combination of either editorial portraiture, so obviously that involves taking photos of people for magazines and for media, and I enjoy that. So that's kind of like an ongoing thing, and then there's also, as I say, the commercial photography element to it as well. One of the assignments that we're busy with at the moment is a campaign for an activewear, or for an activewear brand, and we are doing quite a lot of location shoots for that, with people sort of like running and hiking, and there's biking and sort of fishing. And that's quite a nice. It's an interesting assignment. So it means getting up really early,
scouting,
making the most of light, making the most of the best light, location scouting, and so it's it's a nice assignment. So I'm enjoying that.
How did you actually get to that? Did you have an agent to get you to that work, or was it more or less your own ability to scout that work, or
No, that was. Well, that was actually a referral from an acquaintance that referred me to the company.
Yeah.
And I made contact with them and just I guess follow through on the lead, which is important. That follow through always makes a big difference.
To get that,
Yeah.
With your, in terms of your editorial shoots, are you fixed with a certain agency that you work with, or a magazine that normally books you, or do you got an agent in that way? Or
I do have an agent. So a lot of my editorial work seems to be word of mouth and sort of from my existing network of editorial clients and referrals. So yeah, the nature of the editorial shoots also is that the budgets are never going to be the same as commercial budgets. So typically there's the benefits for an agent to pour a lot of energy into marketing to an editorial client base is, the payoff is not really that substantial.
Not that big, yeah.
So the nice thing about editorial is, and I think it's often like that, is that as photographers we probably enjoy editorial shoots because they usually are quite nice and creative, and they usually give you something to put into your portfolio.
Definitely.
So.
Would you recommend being more on a personal level with your clients, and obviously your art directors, something in that direction where you would definitely be more personal, I think? I think it's important to be professional. So I think people, regardless of what kind of client you work with, I think a level of professionalism is always a good thing. Always a must, yeah.
They want to know that they can rely on you, that there's a level of
respect,
professionalism and predictability about the work that you'll do. Predictability not necessarily in the style of the work, but the fact that they know that if they employ you to do or if they give you an assignment, that you will deliver, unless some disaster happens. But having said that, when the professional, it's also nice to be able to connect with a client and actually have, a relationship which makes it nice to work with people. So I do believe in that.
And they always remember you. And
exactly.
Don't forget you so quickly. Actually.
Yeah, and you're not always going to connect with everybody, and that's just the nature of the the nature of the business. So it's nice. It's really nice when you do form good connections with clients and you get repeat assignments from them.
Yeah, exactly. Would you ever underprice yourself? I mean, in terms of you really want to achieve a goal or get into a certain magazine, would you underprice yourself in terms to just reach that goal, or would you say I would never do something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite definitely against the idea of lowering my perceived value.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I think eventually you start to believe as well, if you do that. And it's often said as well, if you underprice yourself today, a client will expect that indefinitely, ongoing basis. And in a way, you also show to your client that that you're willing to drop your rates. And so for me, I think it's very important. It's always been, and I've probably lost a lot of assignments based on that. Is that I'd rather just put a fair value to my work, and stick to that. And if that means that you lose assignments, then that's that's the way it is. The problem as well is that also if you underprice yourself, you drive the whole industry down.
Exactly.
It's already the industry has already changed a lot. If you look at probably how the model was in the 80s and the 90s, probably it's changed a lot. The market's very saturated. So yeah, I mean I think it's important to actually value your work and believe in that, and then believe in yourself as a photographer.
Yeah. So do you have any tips for us on how to get quicker into the door into a magazine or an agency? Do you have a certain way of how to approach someone if you want to get his attention to your work, or you know what I mean, get into the door?
I mean, It's a tricky one because I'm not the world's best marketer. In fact, I think a lot of creative people, marketing is not our strong point. We like the act of creating, and we don't really like knocking on doors and ramming our work down. I mean, I suppose ideally we'd love people to come to us to say that they love our work and they'd like to work with us. But the reality is that you do have to. I think as a freelancer, you do have to actively market yourself. Well, you definitely would benefit from any effort that you.
Do you have any certain email techniques or something you would?
I don't actually. To be honest, a lot of as I say, a lot of my clients have come from referrals and word of mouth, and then obviously I do have artist representation agency that represents me. So very often they would take on the role of marketing you to a potential client base. I think I always believe that as artists we've got to create the work. Maybe it's a bit of a utopian view, but it's like in the Wayne's World thing. If you book the venue, the people will come type of thing. So I always think that if you create beautiful, captivating or compelling work, people will want to work with you. So that's a belief I have, and it's not always the correct one, but I do think as a general guideline on how you spend your time and how you invest your time in what you do. Rather focus on the work that you love to do. And I think it'll show in it, and I do believe that it'll get an audience.
As you're a freelancer, right? 100% freelancer. Do you like work on a tight schedule during the day, or do you take every day as it comes? Or?
Yeah, that's also something. It is also it's very easy as a freelancer to kind of fall into a pattern where you're not that structured. And I'm victim of that myself at times. And I always try and get better at being a little bit more organized. So I try and say, on a daily basis, at least allocate a little bit of time, perhaps to marketing, a little bit of time to admin, and then, obviously time for shooting or retouching.
Not losing track, going on to YouTube and drifting.
Completely. It's that can very easily happen. But I think if you have a structure about your day, at least even if you're spending a half an hour per day on marketing or on admin, I think it's good. Because otherwise, it's very easy just to get sucked into this creative world, or as you say, distractions, and you get to the end of the day, and you kind of wonder.
And you just sit in front of the computer and do nothing actually.
Yeah, and I'm also a dad. I've two 7-year-old twin girls, so they also, being a freelancer affords me the time to do things with them, which is great. But obviously, that also places additional pressure on your time. So I think, and I wish that I had the answer for it, but I don't. But I do have in the back of my head, I do understand the need for being more structured. So I do think there's benefit.
So you are 100% freelancer. Do you mostly source your work yourself, or do you say you have an agent? I also work with an agent, or I'm signed with 2 or 3 agencies and I only work with that, or do you source more of your work yourself? Do you really need an agent? That's what I'm asking.
I think both. Both models could work. I do think you can't just transfer the responsibility to the success of your career to an agent. The idea is that the agent would work for you, but I think if you just take a back seat, then
and wait for the work to come. Then.
So I think it has to come from both sides, and I don't have that expectation of my agents as well. I do believe that your success is firmly in your hand. You can't, as I say, you can't expect somebody else to make your career work. So I do think that one has to perhaps target specific clients that you'd like to work with and be active. And
with active, you also mean, or do you think that follow-up work is that in terms of active? Be more. What do you think about follow-up work? Is it more a thing that...
You mean if you've worked with somebody and then follow up with them and just
exactly.
I mean, I think it's also very important. I think you know, it's the whole thing. It's easier to keep a client than get a new client.
Yeah.
So I think the same applies to what we do as well. If you've worked with somebody and hopefully they've enjoyed working with you, then I think it is worth keeping in touch and showing interest in what they do as well.
Yeah. So, well, your life is now actually photography. It's your love, it's your life, and it's your job, obviously, as well.
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line and say, okay, this is now just not for my job. This is just because I love this creativity and love photography. Do you still have like projects by the side that you just run for yourself and maybe in a few years do something out of it, or just for the love of photography? Do you draw a line and say you do something like that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the reason why I left IT and got into photography was for the fact that I definitely wanted to enjoy what I do.
What you do
more. Well, I've kind of got this theory, and it's not a big revelation, but I think you can't be successful at something if you don't have a natural love for it. I think if you look through time, anybody who's been successful, if you go and look at them, I don't think they felt like somebody was holding a gun to their head and forcing them to do it. But
you've been running this like a small portrait series.
Yeah. So I mean, to get back to that, I think so. The really great thing is that I do probably 95% of the work that I do, I really enjoy doing. It's only on rare occasion that I might accept a commission that's not really the kind of thing that I enjoy doing. For instance, it might be, you know, shooting an event or something. So I don't really do that, but you know, I can remember the few times that I have done that. You know, it's taking me into a creative space that I don't really enjoy being. So most of the time, the work that I do, I really do enjoy, and each assignment's got a good challenge. So for me, it's very difficult to draw the line between sort of in terms of stimulation and excitement between assignments and personal work. But having said that, I do think it's very important to do personal work, because we all have our own creative visions.
Exactly.
And whenever you work with the client, to some extent, you're going to compromise your involvement or your vision with that, because you're kind of more now shooting towards a specific be it a creative director or an art director, a different vision. And that's, you know, and I'm happy to do. I quite enjoy doing that as well, where you realize somebody's vision. But that's why I think it's very important to shoot personal work as well, where you're just purely realizing what's in your head.
Exactly.
So the portrait project that you referred to, I mean, a lot of my early work started off with being conceptual portraiture. So a lot of kind of time and you know, effort went into realizing each of those shots.
Yeah, exactly.
So then I started doing the close-up series of portraits, because I just wanted a way that I could create a beautiful, provocative portrait of somebody in a couple of minutes. So that was it for me, because I enjoyed the process of photographing people.
I really felt the love that you have for that.
Yeah.
While you were shooting my portrait as well.
Yeah, I mean, I do.
I've
always had a love affair with faces. Even from when I was younger, I used to take like really cool photos out of magazines, and I used to do like pencil drawings of them. And then early on, I stumbled upon the work of the photorealist Chuck Close, and I loved his work. He did really big canvases of people, friends, himself, with airbrush, and I just loved that. And then obviously, you know, throughout time, the Richard Avedons and the David Baileys.
That I think it inspired you as well. Maybe.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, and sort of, and even the more contemporary guys like Platon and Martin Schuller and all of those are very beautiful work. So that was an inspiration for that. Yeah,
definitely. Would you ever say that you only show certain things that you shoot, and you're selective with what you shoot and show, obviously in portfolio, or?
Yeah. I mean, as I say, I'm quite selective in a way with with the kind of work that I do, and I think it's, in a way, it's by design. I think people employ me to, or they kind of get me for an assignment based on what I do. So it's always that thing, be careful what you wish for because it may come true. Yeah. So with me it was like that. I kind of enjoyed the idea of shooting sort of high-end, provocative people photographs, and I ended up being that guy that people get for that. Okay. And then so the second thing is I'm very selective about what I show. So not necessarily everything that I shoot I would end up in the portrait. So I'm very selective about, in a way, selecting what goes into.
But I think that also
portfolio.
Exactly doing that selection has brought you to that where you are today with just being this portrait photographer.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose that's one of the areas that we have some control over, how we present ourselves, and a portfolio is one way that you do that.
Yeah, exactly.
You kind of take, and it's not a bad idea, I suppose, to consult other creatives and people that you work with and say, excuse me, what should be my portfolio? So I think sometimes we get also too insular, and we kind of have this own little vision about what's our best work, and I'm not sure that that's always the best approach. So I think it's good to consult other people to say and edit, but yeah.
Great. Do you, like all of us, we all have our bad mood and depressed situation, or where we get into that depressed phase. Do you also battle with that, or how do you cope with that?
Yeah, you do. I think any creative probably suffers or has bouts of that from time to time. And I think it's when, for me personally, it's when I kind of retreat too much in my own world.
Yeah. Do you have a certain way how to get out of it, or do you motivate yourself?
Yeah, I do. Or, I think the one thing I have found is that if you almost just put yourself into a creative space and create, because I find I get like that if I'm not creating enough. So, so that's very important. So go out and assign yourself and do something. Go and shoot. Whether
don't just sit around, get bored and
yeah, exactly. Because then you end up like spending time on social media, YouTube, and again time just kind of disappears.
Yeah, flies, and
so I think if you
keep yourself active,
if you just assign yourself, come up with a little project that you want to do. It might, as I say, it might just be picking up your camera and going to shoot something. I think that kind of puts you into a different space. And I've always found that that's really good for your mind space, or for your
definitely
your mental state. And then the strange thing that seems to happen whenever you do that, you seem to attract other people as well. So if business is quiet, the moment I've always found, if you then go and do your own project, suddenly, things happen. So I suppose it's the difference about being out there versus just being, kind of the curse of the freelancer, just being in your own space and getting too isolated.
Yeah. Okay, so knowing all of that, what you actually know now, and through all the years, is there something you would have changed along the way? You say that was a mistake doing that, or did you do everything perfect until up to now?
Yeah, I don't think I would change anything specifically. Maybe I do think that you very often you're retrospectively reminded of the fact that time is very precious. It's an old cliche.
Yeah.
So I think you might just look back and say there were certain areas that you invested time in that perhaps you didn't really have to, or that you could have used that time a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I think it's just about being.
But I think it also plays to that mistakes you learned, and that's what makes you really good today.
Yeah. So I don't have regrets that I sort of had a 12-year IT career, because I think it helps me in being able to technically realize a lot of things. I can maintain my own website, and I can do a lot of things like that, or I can.
Understand gear also better.
Yeah, I do. So I have a good technical knowledge, and sort of, so that's absolutely fine. And also that also afforded me the ability to take that year off quite late in my career and study photography. Because I think you get to a stage where you do have financial commitments, which maybe makes it difficult to break out of
That circle.
constant salary, or that secure job.
Yeah.
And that's actually a question I do get, or people comment on that often. They say it must be really difficult, or to late in your career to completely do a change.
Yeah. Well,
once you kind of settled in something.
Yeah.
So I do think it's, as they say, it's never too late. I think if you plan for it, you can change your career and your destiny.
Definitely. But you really do love your new job now. And
I do. I absolutely. Yeah. I think it's the photography industry it's going through a bit of a shake-up. It's changing all the time. It's very volatile. Sometimes it can be quite scary to be part of it. So I think you can either go and bury your head in the sand, or you can try and be successful and be dynamic in how you approach it.
Yeah, that's so true. Great, yeah. One more question I actually have for my viewers is, where can my viewers find some of your work online on your website?
So obviously on www.mornevanzyl.com, and then also obviously I have with
Facebook, and I know you're very active on Twitter. You have a Twitter feed, which we'll obviously all blend in the description down below. And
then also I also obviously with you I have another creative venture, Next Studio, which I'm very excited about. I really enjoy doing that. So there we're doing sort of fairly high-end and very creative projects that takes a lot of planning and a lot of fine execution. So very often, I enjoy that work because whereas editorial work is very often fairly quick, you're in and out, and there's an element of efficiency. This kind of gives us, the ability to do some really nice creative work that
leads in different directions.
Exactly. So, and that's Next Studio, which we'll also show the links of.
Definitely, yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
And thanks for being here.
Thanks
guys,
for including me in your world. It's always good.
Pleasure. Guys, that's all about the interview today. So if you do like the video, please do give us a like for the video. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about Morne Van Zyl and what you thought about this whole interview vibe today. Do subscribe, and see you guys all next week in another tutorial. Bye bye.